New growth, hobbling hobbit. The words loop through my brain as I drag my sorry self along the worn path through spruce woods on this fresh spring day. Right foot forward a few inches, I think hobbling. Left foot drags to meet it, hobbit. Roots that frost heaved over the winter might as well be mountains. One step at a time. Hobbling, hobbit. Hobbling, hobbit. That's what I now am. Bent, doughy and caped in a wool blanket because I am always freezing. And toxic. The wool hat that Lonnie knitted for me for Mother's Day with its lacy pattern of empty spaces makes my bald head itch. She has chosen to stay away. It's not COVID. The chemicals in my blood could be bad for her baby, or so she says. Thank you, chemo. The gift that keeps giving. Hobbling. Hobbit. But hobbits aren't bald. They gamble into the world on their grand adventures, walking sticks in hand. I used to love adventures. Now, I can't even make it to my mailbox. Maybe I shouldn't have taken the long way, hobbling. That's all I am. At least I make it to the clearing where my favorite tree, a magnificent oak, spreads her welcoming arms. The ground is dry, I have hours to kill. I rest in the sun and look up at her new leaves the size of mouse ears. In other times, I would think about planting my corn. Now, I think about planting myself. Her bark feels rough through my layers, but also comforting. It's good to feel the support. To feel warm. To feel anything. The fresh grass coming up through the dead stuff must smell intoxicating in the bright warm sun, a sensory experience that is now just a pleasant memory. Chemo nose, chemo brain, chemo fatigue. I love this spot. If I lack the strength to get back up, I would be content to stay here forever. Lonnie thinks a green burial is gross, but that's what I want. A biodegradable shroud, a hole in the ground, and me, with a beautiful oak tree growing above me. It makes all of this less horrible if I know that someday, her baby will swing from branches that were nourished by my recycled bones. Why waste them? God only knows, I've wasted so many other opportunities in this life. I want to get this last one right. I marked the spot the day I was diagnosed, in case things went that way. I can see the purple painted stakes from here. They are far enough away from my friendly tree that her roots will not be damaged when they dig the hole, but close enough that she and I will be neighbors. Our roots will grow toward each other and someday, touch. She is so far away, my daughter. Will I have time to heal the hurts I clawed in her spirit? Does she know I was naive and stupid? Not intentionally cruel? Like a boy carving a heart in a tree to document his love. I had little knowledge of good mothering. We had to learn together. Just because I was a poor student does not mean she was a bad teacher. I pray she comes to understand the depth of my love for her when she feels it for her own child the moment she sees her. I didn't understand my own mother until she was gone. Too late. Too late. Is it too late for Lonnie and me? I crave a grandchild, the child of my child. But Lonnie is more important to me. She comes first. My fingertips root in the soil. My eyelids are heavy in this bright light. There are no words in my dream. I feel my friend's rough bark. She holds me safe in her understanding branches as we head west toward the setting sun. Like an ant, she carries me over mountains and plains, pulling us along a network of multicolored underground connections. I recognize the maple tree in Lonnie's front yard. I gaze through the bedroom window. Lonnie is asleep next to Kip, her ring catching a diamond of moonlight where her hand cradles her pregnant belly. Then I am in my bunk bed. I see Mom gazing at me from the apple tree in our front yard. I feel light. There is no pressure. I'm not squeezed, like during my birth. This isn't a tunnel out of the darkness. There is only light. And my mother, holding me. Ethereal joy, my soul flies into the firmament through a green haze. I stay tethered to the earth through my sleeping fingers. But I soar. Moisture pumped from deep roots replenishes my desiccated heart. Lonnie opens her eyes. She pulls back the bedclothes. She floats toward us in her lacy nightgown, her arms slender and bare in the moonlight. She opens her window but can't come out. I kiss her reaching hand and place a golden apple in it, as round and ripe as the life filling her belly. As sweet as the mystery of forgiveness, which I silently beg of her. Squirrel chitter above my head awakens me. When I was a child, I would have climbed as high as I could to reach it. I spent my youth cradled in the arms of trees, and escaped from the fights and alcohol-fueled miseries. I did the best I could with what I had. I could have done worse. Mom ran to Dad, after all. Much worse. She was so young, trying to parent from magazine.
For Grandma Margaret, I have just gotten home from the longest of long 12 hours that somehow turned into 16 hours because of staffing issues, nursing shifts. I am exhausted mentally and physically, and I feel filthy with sweat, tears, and many other things I should not be covered in. All I want to do right now is chop something into oblivion until I feel somewhat normal again. I want to not have to think for just a little while. When I unlock my apartment door, I am surprised to find Grandma Margaret sitting at the kitchen table. Smiling, as always. After a shower and a change of clothes, I realizes that exactly what I need to do is make noefla soup for myself and Grandma. What is noefla soup, you may ask? It is a German dumpling soup that you'll be hard-pressed to find in any diner outside of the Midwest. Those who eat it are picky about how it is made, and no two people make it exactly the same. Not only that, but it is a recipe that is impossible to make exactly the same every time that you make it. Grandma Mary taught me how to make it as a small girl. Long before junior high and shortly after I learned to read. It has always been our favorite meal to share. Starting with the vegetables, I carefully peels the potatoes, making sure that I cut off the skin, and only a small amount of potato. No conversation passes between the two of us. Grandma always knows when I needed a mental break at the end of the day and how most times I can't talk about what went so horribly wrong due to patient privacy. She never pushes me to talk about it. Instead, she sits at the table and watches as I goes through the motions of preparing our dish. A pound or so of potatoes later, I'm never too careful about the amounts that go into making noefla soup, or the recipe. Noefla soup is not a dish of measurement, it is a dish of feelings. The amounts that go into it depend on what you're hungry for at the moment, what looks right, or what feels right. No recipe has ever been put on paper, just passed on from one generation to the next with wise words of "Whenever it looks like enough, dear." Grandma always said that it was not a recipe meant to be shrunk or modified. It always makes a large amount, and any attempt at shrinking has been unsuccessful, although making it larger comes out perfectly every time. This works well when you are from the Midwest and are a firm believer in freezing the extra for a day when you don't want to make it from scratch. I chop the celery, carrots, and onions quickly as Margaret looks on from the table, nodding her approval occasionally. Once all of the vegetables are cooking in a lot of butter, yes, it's bad for you, but most comfort foods are, it's time to make the noefla dough. My favorite part of making this meal, and also the most comforting. Eggs, flour, and a tiny bit of chicken broth get mixed together until everything is mixed together. The secret is to use only a certain amount of flour and add more chicken broth until it is right. Doing the reverse, adding set amounts of all three ingredients and adding more flour tends to make the dough taste just like you would think it would. Flour. Some people prefer chicken noodle soup, others like macaroni and cheese after long days. For me it is noefla soup. Creating the dough is one of the most relaxing things I could think to do after a long day, and Grandma watches carefully as I knead the dough and rolls it into snakes. Only every once in a while does she gestures to add just a little more chicken broth. Dropping bits of dough into boiling chicken broth puts me into a trance. As I place the lid on the pot to boil for several minutes, my mind slips into the past. The bad melts away quickly, and memories of standing on a stool wearing Grandma's second-best apron make their way to the front of my mind. I remember the hem of the apron dragging on the floor at first, being so little I could barely see over the counter. Then I remember the awkward middle school years and unloading my boy and friend troubles over a bowl of noëfla dough. Lastly, I remember becoming an adult, and trying hard to make time in my busy life for Grandma's house at least once a week. Though, once work, friends, significant others, and my own children came into the picture, it seems that almost 2 would go by before I found myself back in her kitchen again. As I put the finishing touches on the soup and turn off the burner, the memories fade and I am back in my own apartment once again. Grandma says nothing, but she has always made my day better, just by being there. I dish a single bowl of soup, butter a piece of bread, because nothing goes with noëfla soup the way a buttered piece of bread does. And sit down at the table. Grandma Mary has been gone for 11 years now, and on the hardest days, after the worst shifts, I always miss her the most. The regrets become an inner monologue, before being spoken out loud. Did I spend enough time with her?